Buckle up, everyone, because today we are taking a deep dive into Andromeda's Edge, a board game about rebuilding civilization on the, well, edge of Andromeda. And let me tell you, these rulebooks are massive, so we've got our work cut out for us.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be looking at this one from all angles, from building up that space station to launching ships out into the unknown. And of course, we got to talk about how to take on those fearsome raiders, right?
Now, I know some of our listeners might be thinking, another space exploration game. But there's something special about Andromeda's Edge. It's not just about going where no one's gone before. It's about making tough choices. You know, with limited resources, every single decision matters.
Absolutely. If every choice has a ripple effect. Makes every playthrough a new adventure, that's for sure.
You're not just exploring, you're building something, establishing a foothold out there.
Exactly. And you got to be smart about it. Managing resources, planning for the unexpected, dealing with those other factions. Oh, and did I mention the raiders?
Yeah, we can't forget about those. So right from the start, we're talking about balancing a lot, aren't we? Exploration, development, combat, it's all got to work together.
And to make things even more interesting, the game setup itself is variable. Different player counts, event decks. You can even customize the types of raiders you face.
So one game, you might be a seasoned explorer cruising through the galaxy, and the next, bam, you're fighting for survival against a swarm of those, what are they called?
S-class raiders, and those are a whole other level of challenge.
See, that's what I love about games like this.
Yeah.
You can't just memorize one strategy. You have to adapt. Think on your feet.
That's the key to Andromeda's Edge, adaptability.
Now, let's get to the core of the game. Each turn, it all comes down to one decision.
Launch or return to station? Simple as that.
Oh, but I bet there's a lot of depth hidden in that simplicity.
You bet there is. So launching a ship, that's how you venture out into the galaxy. Claim resources, explore new planets, maybe even pick a fight with a rival.
Sounds exciting. But what about returning to station?
Well, that's how you build up your capabilities. Activate those powerful modules. Improve your station. Get ready for the long haul.
So it's a classic dilemma, right? Explore the unknown or consolidate your power. It's like a constant push and pull.
That's the heart of the game, finding that balance.
And I imagine those regions you explore play a big role in all this, don't they? We've got planets, alliance bases, and those nebulae.
Each one offering unique actions and rewards.
You know, those nebulae, they sound kind of spooky, but also kind of cool.
Oh, they are. They're shrouded in uncertainty. Only ships with the voyage ability can even enter.
Oh, so there's a risk involved.
For sure. There's a chance you'll run into those raiders lurking within.
High risk, high reward, huh?
That's the nebulae in a nutshell.
So it's a strategic decision, right? Play it safe or gamble on those potentially game-changing rewards.
See, you're already getting into the strategic mindset.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of the choices you'll be making in Andromeda's Edge.
Now, you mentioned those alliance bases. What's their role in all this?
Think of them like neutral hubs scattered across the galaxy. Any player can use them, but you gotta meet certain requirements.
Sounds like a strategic opportunity.
Oh, they are. Each alliance base has a unique action you can perform.
So they're like little mini-games within the larger game.
You could say that.
Give me an example. What kind of strategic decisions might I face with these bases?
Well, let's say you want to gain an edge in combat. You could activate the Monolith of Ancients, draw some powerful tactics cards.
Okay, so that's good if I'm expecting trouble. But what if I'm more of a, resource management kind of player?
Well, then the trade hub might be more your speed. Exchange resources for those valuable credits.
Ah, so it's all about adapting to the situation, using those bases to your advantage.
Exactly. But remember, activating an alliance base always has a cost. You can't just waltz in and take what you want.
So resource management is key here. Got to be smart about where you send your ships and what you do.
Oh, it's a real brain burner, that's for sure.
Sounds like we've got a lot more to unpack here.
We've only scratched the surface.
That's right. We'll be back soon to delve deeper into the world of Andromeda's Edge. So stay tuned, Space Explorers. There's plenty more to discover. Welcome back, everyone, to our deep dive into Andromeda's Edge. Last time, we talked about the big picture, balancing that exploration with development, figuring out those nebulae, and of course, we touched on those strategically important alliance bases.
Now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty, take command of our fleets, and learn how to launch those starships into the unknown.
All right, Captain, I'm ready to plot our course. What are the key things we need to think about when we launch our ships?
Well, that first launch of your turn, that's like setting the stage, right? It's your chance to grab a prime location, whether it's a planet loaded with resources or an alliance base that fits your strategy.
So I got to be thinking ahead, anticipating what I'll need for the whole turn.
Exactly. You got to be a few steps ahead of the game. Now, That first launch gives you a lot of freedom, but those subsequent launches, they get a little trickier.
Oh.
Well, you can only launch a ship within range of one of your ships that's already out there.
So it's like building a chain, each ship extending your reach further into the galaxy. Makes sense. But what if I want to go somewhere that's already occupied, by another player, or, even worse, a raider?
Ooh, that's when things get interesting. Launching into an occupied region, that could lead to a battle, a real showdown.
So it's not just about grabbing resources, it's about anticipating your opponents, maybe even blocking them from key locations.
Now you're thinking strategically. And don't forget about those nebula. Launching into or even near one can trigger a raider strike.
Oh, right, those raiders are always lurking around, aren't they?
Always a threat. And remember, they have that voyage ability, so they can just waltz into those nebulae without a care in the world.
So launching ships is a balancing act, isn't it? Risk versus reward, planning your moves, managing those precious resources. But let's say I've successfully launched my ships, avoided those raider hotspots. What happens next?
That's when you activate the region and the actions you take. Well, those depend on what kind of region you're in.
Okay, let's break it down. First up, planets. What happens when I activate one of those?
Planets, think of those as your resource centers. When you activate one, you claim a moon token from its stack, assuming there are any left, of course.
Right, those moon tokens, they're like the lifeblood of the game, aren't they?
They are. Each one represents a bundle of resources. And the types of resources you get, those vary from planet to planet.
So I got to be strategic about which planets I target. Now, what happens if I land on a planet and all the moon tokens are gone?
Well, you're not completely out of luck. You can still claim the planet's base resource, the one shown on the board. Might not be as much, but hey, it's better than nothing, right?
I'll take what I can get. Now, let's talk about those alliance bases. Those seem less about gathering resources and more about those special actions.
Exactly. Each alliance base has its own unique action. And knowing when to use which one, that's crucial.
Okay, give me some examples. What kind of strategic choices might I face here?
Well, let's say you need to beef up your combat capabilities. You could activate the Monolith of Ancients, spend some resources, and bam, you draw 3 powerful tactics cards.
Sounds like a good way to prepare for a fight. But what if I'm more interested in, the economic side of things?
Then the trade hub might be more your style. Trade in some of those extra resources for credits. And those credits, those act like wild resources later in the game.
So it's like converting one type of resource into a more versatile form.
Now you're getting it.
And if I want to upgrade my station, get those fancy modules.
And then you'll need to head to the Maximus and Odessa fields. Maximus for science and industry modules, Odessa for commerce and civilization.
So those fields are key for boosting my station's capabilities, specializing my faction.
But there's a catch. To buy from those fields, you gotta advance the event marker.
So there's a trade-off, a risk I'm taking.
Exactly. Short-term gain for a potential long-term consequence.
It's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, what about the shipyard?
The shipyard. That's your one-stop shop for fleet management. You can build a new ship, add it to your launch bay, ready for action. Or you can repair a damaged ship or module, get those battle-scarred veterans back in the fight.
So it's like a pit stop, right? Keep those ships in tip-top shape.
Exactly, especially as those battles get more frequent and more intense.
All right, one last alliance-based action, the development office. That one sounds important, especially for those victory points.
Oh, it is. That's where you build those planet-altering developments. Big victory points, other valuable benefits. But building those, it takes resources, and it takes leaders.
Leaders. Tell me more about those.
Leaders are like special characters you can recruit to your faction. Each one has unique abilities and benefits. Now, when you build a development, you gotta assign one of your leaders to it.
So it's a long-term investment. I can't just use them whenever I want.
And those assigned leaders, they contribute to the victory points you get from that development.
So there's a lot to consider here. Which leader to assign, when to do it.
Strategic decisions all around.
This is a lot to take in, but we can't forget about those raiders.
Oh, they haven't forgotten about us, that's for sure.
All right, let's talk about those raider strikes. So even if I avoid those nebulae, those raiders can still come after me.
Oh yeah, they can strike from anywhere within range.
Okay, so how does that work exactly?
Well, if there's already a raider in the active region, you're safe. At least for more raiders. But if not, you gotta check if any raiders are within range.
So there's always that tension, that possibility of a surprise attack.
And now, if a raider is within range, the active player chooses which one will strike. And then boom, that raider moves into the active region.
Okay, so even if I land somewhere safe, I could still end up in a fight. This game keeps you on your toes, doesn't it?
And remember, those S-class raiders, they're a whole other level of challenge. They can swarm a region with multiple ships.
Okay, that sounds terrifying, but I'm ready to face them head on.
That's the spirit. But we'll save the details of those epic battles for next time.
That's right. We'll be back to dive into the heart-pounding action of combat in Andromeda's Edge. Get ready for some action, everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into space combat. We've explored the galaxy, we've built up our stations, but now it's time to see what our starships are really made of.
It's time for those epic showdowns we've been hinting at.
Yeah.
Those raiders are just waiting to pounce. And those rival factions, well, let's just say they're not afraid of a fight.
Now, I've played a lot of space combat games in my time, but something tells me Andromeda's Edge does things a little differently.
Oh, it definitely has its own flavor. It's a mix of strategic thinking, resource management, and yeah, there's a bit of luck involved too. Can't forget about the dice.
All right, I'm hooked. Tell me more. How does a battle actually play out in Andromeda's Edge?
Well, it all starts with escalation. Imagine this. Multiple factions are eyeing the same prize. Could be a planet, could be an alliance base. Now, each player gets to decide, do they commit more ships to the fight? Or do they hold back, conserve their strength?
So it's a bit of a gamble, right? Like, I want to win this, but I don't want to risk losing too many ships.
Exactly. You got to weigh the risks and rewards. And you got to try to anticipate what your opponents are going to do.
It's a mind game as much as anything else.
Yeah.
Now, what about those nebula? Do battles work differently in those?
Good question. Remember, only ships with the voyage ability can enter a nebula, so that limits who can participate in the fight.
Makes sense. So I got to plan ahead. If I'm expecting a nebula battle, I need to make sure I've got those voyage ships ready to go.
Now, if everyone's committed their ships and nobody's backing down, we move on to diplomacy.
Diplomacy. In a space combat game, that's a new one.
See, this is what makes Andromeda's Edge special. Each player can play one diplomacy tactics card from their hand.
Oh, so these cards aren't just for combat bonuses. They can actually influence the political situation, even in the middle of a fight.
Exactly. Some cards might let you score victory points, put pressure on your opponents. Others might even end the battle entirely, force a negotiation.
Wow, so you could win a battle without even firing a shot.
It's all about strategy, outmaneuvering your rivals.
I love it. But let's say diplomacy fails.
Then it's time to roll up those sleeves and get ready for a real space battle.
Bring on the lasers.
First up, we have battle preparations. This is where you figure out how many dice you're rolling, what your targets are.
Okay, so even in the heat of battle, there's still a lot of strategic thinking going on.
Oh yeah, you gotta allocate your resources carefully, think about your ship upgrades, any bonuses you might have, and of course those tactics cards can really come in handy here.
It's like a chess match in space.
Now, once everyone's ready, we roll the dice, and whoever gets the highest single result, they're the winner.
So it's a combination of strategy and luck, just like a real battle.
The winner gets the spoils of war, maybe some victory points, and they also get to advance on the supremacy track, which can lead to some powerful benefits.
Sounds like a high-stakes game. But what about the losers? Do they just slink away defeated?
Not exactly. They get to take a tactical operations action on their station. It's a chance to regroup, recover, maybe get ready for a counterattack.
So even in defeat, there's still a chance to make progress.
Exactly. You might draw a tactics card, gain some resources. It keeps everyone in the game no matter what.
And of course, we can't forget about ship damage.
Right. If a ship takes too many hits, it's off to the scrapyard. Out of commission until you can repair it.
Adds another layer of strategy to the game. Got to protect those ships.
Now, those S-class raiders, they're a whole other story.
Oh yeah, those guys. What makes them so tough?
Well, they hit hard, they can take a beating, but the real challenge is their ability to swarm. They can attack with multiple ships, overwhelm you with sheer numbers.
So I need to be extra careful when those guys are around. Can't just rely on brute force. Got to be smart about it.
And that's the beauty of combat in Andromeda's Edge. It's challenging, it's unpredictable, and it's always exciting.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. We've covered a lot of ground, from the basics to those epic space battles.
We've explored the galaxy, we've built up our empires, and we've faced down those fearsome raiders.
And it's all thanks to this amazing game, Andromeda's Edge. So if you're looking for a space exploration game that's got it all, strategy, combat, resource management, and even a bit of diplomacy, look no further than Andromeda's Edge. We highly recommend it. And that's a wrap for our deep dive into Andromeda's Edge. Until next time, space explorers, keep those starships flying.